I would say that I'm very lucky in the fact that I have a very interesting family, I would say. Um, my father's side is very recently Mexican American. Only, I believe, three generations, with me being the fourth, coming from Mexico very recently. Um, Aside from that, as opposed to my mother's side, who is very much, Anglo-French American. Um, with that, it's something that I'm kind of interested in is the fact that my mother's side has a very detailed history. My grandmother was able to catalog everything from what we've found back to the 1600s on the East Coast with French traders who are coming into America itself. As opposed to my father's side, which, as far back as we know, is my great-great-grandparents came over from Mexico. Besides that, we don't really know much about them. Especially Mexico at the time, there's no records or anything like that, so the actual history of them is kind of lost. We don't have birth certificates, anything like that. The only thing we really have is word of mouth passed down, as opposed to my mother's side, where we have very detailed, so much so that my grandmother, excuse me, was able to find a journal from one of our ancestors who she came over from South Carolina in wagon trains in the 1800s, and it was her journal going across the prairies and seeing Indians and just seeing all of this world changing. It was in the mid 1800s, about 1853, I think. So it was really, it's an experience, and it's a very contrasting experience between the two, as, you know, my mother's side is very well documented. We know what was going on at the time. I mean, even going back to my mother's father, they went through the Dust Bowl. They went through the Great Depression. They were there firsthand. They saw it happen. Even though he was a little boy, he was always, throughout his entire life, even very much, I wouldn't say a cheapskate, but he was very frugal with his money, and he very much, everything he got, he made sure lasted, because he was always afraid that something like this would happen again through his entire life. And it's just kind of interesting to see the two contrasting things. And even going to my father's side, the fact that when my great-grandmother kind of started a family here, it was very much, you're American now. You don't need to know Spanish. You don't need to know this history. It's in the past. You don't need to worry about that. You're American. We're American. Forget about everything else. And it's kind of sad because the last person who's truly fluent in Spanish is my grandmother. And it's kind of something that's slowly being lost. And my father and I try our best to keep the legacy going, I guess, is what you would want to say. And it's very important to us. Our family history is very important to us, and it's something to be proud for. And I'm proud of both my Mexican-American side and my Anglo-French side, my mother's side, my very white side, because there's history there. And history is something that's very unique to every single person. No two things are alike. And I cherish that. And I cherish the fact that I am unique with my history, with my family. And my history is different. And everybody's history is different. Everybody's history is just so interesting to me. And history in general. And where we've come from. Seeing the things that we've done throughout our life is very, very interesting to me.